Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to the Kathy J Show. Thank you so much for joining us this half hour. I know you have a lot of choices, so it means the world to my staff and I that you chill with us this half hour. So thank you so much. You know, you can always catch up on anything that you might have missed at KathyJShow.com, everybody. So we're getting into it today because we have a very exciting show planned for you. Today, we are going to be meeting a deaf actress who lives here in Denver. She's a deaf program specialist at the Denver Office of Sign Language Services. Please welcome Chelsea Lee to the show. Yay!
Thank you. I'm happy to be here today. Yay.
I do want to mention that Chelsea's interpreter, Danielle Strom, is right off camera, so that's the voice that you're hearing. All right, so Chelsea, please tell everybody, when did you first discover you were deaf?
Yes, so I never really had to discover that I was deaf because I was born deaf. I was born to a deaf family. My parents and my brother are all deaf, and so when I was born, I just felt like I was in the normal world, and then my extended family is hearing. So when I started interacting with them, I realized that I was deaf and I was different. I went to a deaf school growing up. I went to a deaf university. I had communication access my whole life, so I never really felt like I was different. I knew I was deaf, and I'm proud to be deaf.
I feel your pride. That is awesome. Do you think it helped that your parents were also deaf because they could teach you the tricks and the tools to maneuver?
Yeah, so my parents are first generation deaf. So my grandparents are both hearing on both sides. So, you know, my parents were language deprived when they were younger. They didn't have full language access. They didn't get all of that information because their family was hearing, and so they would speak. So I was lucky, I was fortunate having parents that were able to expose me to all of that while they experienced language deprivation and lack of exposure. So they did teach me how to navigate through my world better, 'cause a lot of information my parents didn't get when they were younger. And communication access has always been there since I was born. I've always read books, and I've been signing since I was a toddler, since I was a baby.
That is awesome. So have you had hearing friends along the way through your childhood?
Yeah, I did have hearing friends. When I was young, you know, when you're young, it's easy to just play together and you don't really even have to communicate. And then when you become older, you start to notice that there is a struggle between hearing people. So when I bring in an interpreter to communicate with hearing, and there's no like authenticity in that communication, having to communicate through a third party. But as time went by, as I got older, I developed some friendships with hearing people who were willing to interact with me and learn sign and interact directly. That showed that they really cared about me, that direct interaction. And so, yes.
That's awesome. Yes. So over the years then you have taught your friends to communicate with you, but they've been eager to learn.
Exactly. Yep, that's the important part, that desire to learn.
Yes.
If they, you know, don't really care about learning, then but if they're really motivated to communicate with us, that makes all the difference.
Well, we're very motivated to communicate with you today.
Yes, and I'm so happy to be here.
So thank you very much for being here. When we come
Absolutely.
back, everybody, we're going to take a quick break. But when we come back, we're going to talk more with Chelsea about being in the deaf community as well as misconceptions that she wants all of us to know. We'll be right back. Kathy J. Oakwood Homes is an official partner of the Kathy J Show. Oakwood Homes, building happiness. Kathy J. Welcome back to the Kathy J Show, everybody. Chelsea Lee is back with me to share more about the deaf community in Denver. This is applause, correct, Chelsea?
Yes, it is. Right. It's visual clapping because we can't hear clapping, and so the more you see, the more applause you're getting.
Absolutely. Thank you?
That's thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. How did you get involved in the deaf community? You are a sign interpreter for the city and county of Denver. You've interpreted for the mayor. How did you get involved in it in the first place?
So how I became involved in the deaf community, to answer your first question, I was always involved since I was born deaf, right? And deaf people, they gravitate to each other. And so we find other deaf people and we hang out and we figure out what we need as a community. And, you know, as a deaf interpreting has been around for a while, but it's more visible now. Like press conferences, when you see deaf interpreters there, they have ASL interpreters, but the deaf interpreter tends to convey the message and include more culture and more expansion to make sure that the entire deaf community can understand the meaning of the message. And like I mentioned, my parents are both deaf. And so growing up, I would read English letters, and my parents, you know, English isn't their first language. And so I would sign those letters to them, and very complex concepts, I was able to translate those. And that was already in me, that translation between English and ASL, and making sure that the deaf community had access. And it really feels like a natural calling. And since I've gotten into deaf interpreting, it's a fantastic match for me and the deaf community here. And like the mayor is all about access. And so I go and I interpret for the mayor, and I make sure that the community has access.
That's fascinating. I wouldn't understand that someone as an ASL interpreter is different from someone that is deaf interpreting. That you put more stank on your words when you're interpreting. What is that more or less what you're saying?
Well, sure, yes. Deaf interpreters already have that inherent linguistic and cultural aspects, and all of that is already within them. And ASL interpreters more in general learn ASL later in life, and they might learn it in college and practice it later in life, while deaf interpreters have grown up signing. That culture, that language is within them. And that's something that hearing interpreters just don't have.
Yeah.
And so we're trained to really translate that concept. It's complicated, but.
No, for sure. And is there sign language in every single language? Yeah.
There is, yeah. ASL is American Sign Language.
Oh, right.
So here in America, there's Mexican Sign Language, there's Canadian Sign Language, Italian Sign Language. Each country has their own. Some countries have like several sign languages. If they use different languages in that country, then each one has their own. Yep, that's correct. It's not universal.
So that even makes it difficult sometimes to communicate. Has technology helped deaf people communicate a lot, and how?
Sure. So I every day use an app called Big. It's like notes on your phone, on your iPhone. So what I'll do, I order food that way, I take notes, and then I show whoever the hearing person is, like if I want to order a burger and fries. And they'll write back if they're hearing and they don't sign, or maybe they'll type or text, or we can do speech to text, or a hearing person can.
Right.
And I can put my phone up to their mouth, they speak, I look at it. But a day-to-day thing, that's typically what I use is my phone the most. If I want to make a phone call, there's video relay service, VRS, and that automatically connects me to an interpreter who makes the call. And really that makes such a huge difference, because my parents never had that. They always had to use my cousins or their siblings to make calls for them. And so certified interpreters who are trained in following the code of ethics, which is very strict, they translate the information correctly. And then FaceTime. FaceTime is incredible. Being able to call people through FaceTime and not have to use an interpreter and just call straight to another deaf person is really nice.
Yes, the freedom. All right, well, we have to go back. Okay, we have to take a break for a moment. To learn more about the Denver Office of Sign Language Services, you can head to denvergov.org. After the break, everybody, find out more about Chelsea's acting career and her connection to the new Marvel movie Eternals. We'll be right back.
Kathy J.
Ramos Law is an official partner of the Kathy J Show. He's a medical doctor and a lawyer. Ramos Law, what makes us different makes us better.
Kathy J.
Finally, Hollywood is making space for deaf talent. So I think that's what it means for the community at large. You know, we can dream bigger. We can break through in acting. We can become directors. We can become writers. And I hope that this creates a lot more dreamers.
Absolutely, absolutely. Welcome back to the Kathy J Show, everybody. That is actress Lauren Ridloff, who plays the first deaf superhero in the new Marvel movie, Eternals, which is opening this Friday, everybody, in theaters. And I'm back with Chelsea Lee, who is also a deaf actress that has worked with Lauren. Thank you so much for being here, Chelsea. All right, so Chelsea, you worked with Lauren in the movie The Sound of Metal that came out just last year. It's a great movie about a man who is a drummer who loses his hearing and has to learn to become deaf, correct? And you're in the movie playing with Lauren, that actress. Tell
right.
me all about that.
So that was my first professional film experience that I was ever involved in. I did stage theater growing up, and then that opportunity arose, and it was really quite an experience. I met Lauren, and I was so honored to work with her. I saw her before that, and she's so famous, and I learned a lot from her, and she's very sweet. She's the sweetest person I've ever met. She was really supportive, and like you just saw her say, she really wants deaf actors to get that feeling that they're able to do anything. When I was growing up, when I was younger, I made a bucket list, and I wrote an unrealistic bucket list as well. And on that list, I put becoming an actress. But it really happened, and now I see that we can really get involved, and thanks to Darius Marker, the director of Sound of Metal, he really wanted authenticity and deaf actors to be included in that film, so I'm very thankful to him. And that really paved the way for future directors, future casting directors, producers, writers to really write in deaf actors into their productions.
Absolutely. Did you find it difficult on set? Because a director will yell, action, you're not hearing that. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, we actually taught the crew and the director, like rolling. This is the sign for rolling,
okay,
or cut. Just simple gestures, and then we would know that this meant rolling, and then we would begin. Just very simple gestures make all the difference. We also had interpreters on set the entire time, which really made all the difference as well.
Yes, because Lauren being a superhero in the Marvel movie, she must have been around some really crazy moving sets. And I wonder how that would affect someone that can't hear everything happening, the challenges that would bring.
I did see one of Lauren's videos talking about being on set for Eternals, and she was talking about standing and looking forward and not being able to hear the crew behind her. And so Angelina Jolie, yes, used a trigger, something to touch Lauren behind her to give her, it was like a green laser, and letting her know when it was time to cue her, when it was time for her lines. It's not impossible to work with deaf people. There's always workarounds.
Absolutely, and I am so happy that you finally have a superhero that is deaf. What would that have meant to you as a child, knowing that there was a superhero that is deaf? What will that mean for future kids?
When I was younger, right, I never saw a deaf superhero, and so did I think it was possible for myself to be brave and do heroic things? I didn't, because I thought I was deaf and there were things that I couldn't do and only hearing people could do it. And so now that I see a deaf superhero, what does that mean for my kids in the future? It means that they're going to be able to think that they're going to be able to do all of these things and have all of these abilities, and it makes a huge difference for kids, really. They can do it.
Yes, a deaf person can save the planet.
That's right.
Let's talk about some misconceptions that people have about the deaf community. First off, do you prefer to be called deaf? Hearing impaired? You don't like hearing impaired?
No, I don't.
Why do you not like hearing impaired?
Hearing impaired is a very negative, has very negative connotation.
It does?
Impaired means I can't do something. I can do things just fine. I just don't hear. And well, it's like I choose not to hear. I don't choose not to hear. And you know, I can listen very well and communicate very well through an interpreter with hearing people, but impaired is a negative word. Hard of hearing, hearing loss, deaf, it's really important that you ask the person what they identify as, because everyone is different. Deafness is a spectrum. Really a huge range. And some people, they sign all the way 24/7. Some don't sign at all and they prefer to speak, use their voice. And each person has various accommodations and preferred accommodations. So it's important to ask them what they identify as, what words they prefer to use.
Okay, because I do want to be respectful, so that's good to know that I can ask you.
Right.
How do I come up and talk to someone that's deaf? I don't want to startle you. You know, I mean, you can't hear me coming up behind you.
Right.
Do I do the green laser?
Well, no, definitely not. But right, you're right. So if you come up behind me, you can just tap me on the shoulder. And that's typically what people do. If I'm at the grocery store and I have a cart and I'm in the middle of an aisle and I'm looking at, which can of soup I want to buy, and a person comes up and says, excuse me, and then they get angry because they don't know that I can't hear. Just a light tap. It's really, I mean, it's not their fault. They don't know that I'm deaf. And so you could tap me, you can wave.
Okay. That's good to know.
Don't yell.
Right.
Obviously, don't yell at us because we can't hear. Sorry.
You know, it's bad because we were born with hearing, so we don't. So I think that people do feel they need to get louder so you can hear me.
That's right. Mm-hmm, they do, but I can't hear you.
It's not going to work. What other misconceptions do you want us to know about deaf people?
When using an interpreter to talk to a deaf person, talk to the deaf person directly, and if you're talking to them directly, and don't say to the interpreter, tell her or tell them this. Act as if you're having a natural conversation and the interpreter isn't there. A lot of times I notice hearing people, they say to the interpreter, would you mind doing this? Or they talk directly to them, but a deaf person isn't a whole, complete person, talk directly to them.
Yes, because Danielle is our interpreter today, but we kept her off camera because it is about you. And as much as people love to see sign language because we don't normally get to, it's about you, and I do feel you're right. The interpreter detracts from you. So thank you for saying that. What about if two deaf people are having communication? Can I walk between them? I mean, is that...
Yeah,
okay.
Just go through.
I don't know.
Don't be awkward. Don't duck or anything. Just go right through.
And the masks right now. Do you read lips?
So personally, I don't read lips.
Okay.
I do know some people who can read lips a bit, but again, as I said, it's a spectrum. Some are really good at reading lips, some are not, and so masks, it really impacts some deaf people. So clear masks are available, or some people prefer that you just take your mask off. So again, just asking them their preference.
You're awesome, Chelsea. Thank you so much. Okay, everybody, to get in touch with Chelsea, go to her website, chelseaple.com, or connect with her on LinkedIn. Just search for Chelsea Lee. We will be right back.
Kathy J.
The Colorado Lottery is an official partner of the Kathy J Show. Colorado Lottery, play on.
Kathy J.
This is what the end of the world looks like. At least we have front row seats.
You know what's never saved the planet? Your sarcasm.
So welcome back to the Kathy J Show. This is a scene from the new Eternals movie, everybody. The film features a new team of Marvel superheroes, of diverse superheroes who are ancient aliens who have been living on Earth in secret for thousands of years, which I truly believe secretly, so I'm totally down with the movie. But the origin story is all about the characters, and family is such a huge theme in the film of the new Marvels movie. So Chelsea Lee is here, yay, Chelsea! Chelsea, who is your family? Who is your group of superheroes that helps you get through the day?
So like I mentioned earlier, deaf people gravitate towards each other. And when I moved to Denver just a little over a year ago, I found my community here. I got in touch with the deaf community, and they feel like my chosen family. The queer community I got in touch with as well, and I think that we really rely on each other for support and information sharing and networking. Say I want a massage therapist. I can ask the community to give me the name of a deaf massage therapist. Really everyone in this community does something, and so we support each other. We support deaf-owned businesses.
Yes, no, I would never think. Is your masseuse deaf? Do you choose a deaf masseuse?
I mean, I know a deaf masseuse,
Okay,
but
that's cool.
I don't. It was just an example.
Oh no, I was just thinking of so many different possibilities in life of services that you go to that you search out that are deaf people.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of deaf-owned businesses, especially here, and like a deaf dentist. There's a deaf
Awesome.
dentist, and you know, my mouth is wide open. I can't communicate. How am I supposed to communicate through an interpreter? But with a deaf dentist, we just sign to each other. They explain everything to me.
You're so right. You're so right. All right, Chelsea, I could have talked to you all day. Everybody, we have to let you go today, but thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Chelsea. And remember, you can catch Eternals on the big screen starting this Friday, and the Regal Continental has a dedicated open caption auditorium that'll be playing Eternals all weekend long. Open caption movies and showtimes are listed on regular movies at, regalmovies.com.